Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone. Welcome back to the live studios here in Radha Lane, right next to Shri Radha Neelamadhava's temple in ISKCON of Houston, Texas, USA. At least it still is. And we have reached the Srimad-Bhagavatam, first canto, 9th chapter, Disappearance of Bhismadeva. This is one of the most emotionally surcharged chapters, especially in the first few cantos. All right. But before we go on, anyway, I didn't mention this. But I got some messages. What's that thing on your arm? And they were all, from Hong Kong. They were all, are you okay? We're worried now. So this is a sling, and my arm is in the sling because in the Denver airport, anyway, it's a long story. Just to make the long story short, I tripped on something. Either somebody tripped me or I tripped on something. And I went, walking very fast to try to get my balance. And then I fell full on and blacked out for a second. And the full weight went on my elbow. And so now my arm is black and blue from here all the way to here. And we're waiting for the results of the x-ray. But good thing is that my hands, there's no change in the movement or the feeling of my fingers when I move them. So, but my elbows are both dislocated from birth. So there may be complications, there may not be. But one thing I can tell you, we're not these bodies. And in case you didn't notice, the readings are just getting better and better. And the recordings the last 2 days were exceptionally sweet and deep and flowing. So please don't worry, everybody. We're okay. Thank you for the public announcement address. Now, we're going to read the prayer by Sanatana Goswami to the Srimad-Bhagavatam, the beautiful Srimad-Bhagavata Mahima Stotram. And it goes like this. Sure this is put in the right place? Because, this garland, everything gets in the way with this thing.
I can put it on the other side.
Just a second, folks. We're having a little technical support here. Okay. Srimad Bhagavata Mahima Stotram. Sarva Shastrabdi Yusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwandoditaditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshaksharaya Te Sarvadasa Vasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nishtaraga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhuta dhayin atini chochatakara hanamunchagadachin mam premnarit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Text 9, the passing away of Bhismadeva in the presence of Lord Krishna. Text 1. Sutta Goswami said, being afraid of having killed so many subjects, being afraid for having killed so many subjects on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Maharaj Yudhishthira went to the scene of the massacre. There, Bhismadeva was lying on a bed of arrows, about to pass away. Purport. In this 9th chapter, it is willed by Lord Sri Krishna. In this 9th chapter, as it is willed by Lord Sri Krishna, Bhismadeva will impart instructions to King Yudhishthira on the subject of occupational duties. Bhismadeva will also offer his last prayer to the Lord on the verge of passing away from this mortal world, and thus become liberated from the bondage of further material engagements. Bhismadeva was endowed with the power of leaving his material body at will, and his lying down on the bed of arrows was his own choice. This passing away of the great warrior attracted the attention of all the contemporary elites, and all of them assembled there to show their feelings of love, respect, and affection for the great soul. Text 2. At that time, all his brothers followed him on beautiful chariots drawn by first-class horses decorated with gold ornaments. With them were Vyasa and rishis like Domya, the learned priest of the Pandavas, and others. Text 3. O sage amongst the Brahmanas, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, also followed, seated on a chariot with Arjuna. Thus King Yudhishthira appeared very aristocratic, like Kuvera, surrounded by his companions, the Guhyakas. Purport. Lord Sri Krishna wanted the Pandavas to be present before Bhismadeva in the most aristocratic order, so that he might be pleased to see them happy at the time of his death. Kuvera is the richest of all the demigods, and herein King Yudhishthira appeared like him, Kuvera, for the procession, along with Sri Krishna, was quite appropriate to the royalty of King Yudhishthira. Text 4. Seeing him, Bhishma, lying on the ground, like a demigod fallen from the sky, the Pandava king Yudhishthira, along with his younger brothers and Lord Krishna, bowed down before him. Purport. Lord Krishna was also a younger cousin of Maharaj Yudhishthira, as well as the intimate friend of Arjuna. But all the family members of the Pandavas knew Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord, although conscious of his supreme position, always behaved in a humanly custom, and so he also bowed down before the dying Bhismadeva, as if he were one of the younger brothers of King Yudhishthira. Text 5. Just to see the chief of the descendants of King Bharata, Bhishma, all the great souls in the universe, namely the rishis among the demigods, brahmanas and kings, all situated in the quality of goodness, were assembled there. Purport. The rishis are those who have attained perfection by spiritual achievements. Such spiritual achievements can be earned by all, whether one is a king or a mendicant. Bhismadeva himself was also one of the Brahmarshis and the chief of the descendants of King Bharata. All rishis are situated in the quality of goodness. All of them assembled there on hearing the news of the great warrior's impending death. All the sages, like Parvata Muni, Narada, Domya, Vyasa, the incarnation of God, Brihadashva, Bharadwaj, and Parashuram, and disciples, Vashishta, Indrapramada, Trita, Gritsamada, Asita, Kakshivan, Gotama, Atri, Koshika, and Sudarshana were present. Purport. Now we have a little historical identity, little summary of each one of these persons. Parvata Muni is considered to be one of the oldest sages. He is almost always a constant companion of Narada Muni. They are also spacemen, competent to travel in the air without the help of any material vehicle. Parvata Muni is also a Devarshi, or a great sage amongst the demigods, like Narada. He was present along with Narada at the sacrificial ceremony of Maharaj Janamejaya, son of Maharaj Parikshit. In this sacrifice, all the snakes of the world were to be killed. Parvata Muni and Narada Muni are called Gandharvas also because they can travel in the air singing the glories of the Lord. Since they can travel in the air, they observed Draupadi's Swayamvara ceremony, selecting of her own husband, from the air. Like Narada Muni, Parvata Muni also used to visit the royal assembly in the heaven of King Indra. As a Gandharva, sometimes he visited the royal assembly of Kuvera, one of the important demigods. Both Narada and Parvata were once in trouble with the daughter of Maharaj Srinjaya. Maharaj Srinjaya got the benediction of a son by Parvata Muni. Narada Muni is inevitably associated with the narrations of the Puranas. He is described in the Bhagavatam. In his previous life, he was the son of a maidservant, but by good association with pure devotees, he became enlightened in devotional service, and in the next life, he became a perfect man, comparable with himself only. In the Mahabharata, his name is mentioned in many places. He is the principal Devarshi, or the chief sage amongst the demigods. He is the son and disciple of Brahmaji, and from him the disciplic succession in the line of Brahma has been spread. He initiated Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, and many celebrated devotees of the Lord. He initiated even Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedic literatures, and from Vyasadeva, Madhvacharya was initiated, and thus the Madhva Sampradaya, in which the Gaudiya Sampradaya is also included, has spread all over the universe. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu belonged to this Madhva Sampradaya. Therefore, Brahmaji, Narada, Vyasa, down to Madhva, Chaitanya, and the Goswamis all belong to the same line of disciplic succession. Naradaji has instructed many kings from time immemorial. In the Bhagavatam, we can see that he instructed Prahlad Maharaj while he was in the womb of his mother, and he instructed Vasudeva, father of Krishna, as well as Maharaj Yudhishthira. Domya, a great sage who practiced severe penances at Utkochaka Tirtha, and was appointed royal priest of the Pandava kings. He acted as the priest in many religious functions of the Pandavas, Sanskara. And also each of the Pandavas was attended by him at the betrothal of Draupadi. He was present even during the exile of the Pandavas and used to advise them in circumstances when they were perplexed. He instructed them how to live incognito for 1 year, and his instructions were strictly followed by the Pandavas during that time. His name is mentioned also when the general funeral ceremony was performed after the Battle of Kurukshetra. In the Anushasana Parva of Mahabharata 127, 15 and 16, he gave religious instructions very elaborately to Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was actually the right type of priest of a householder, for he could guide the Pandavas on the right path of religion. A priest is meant for guiding the householder progressively in the right path of ashrama dharma, or the occupational duty of a particular caste. There is practically no difference between the family priest and the spiritual master. The sages, saints, and brahmanas were especially meant for such functions. Badarayana Vyasadeva. He is known as Krsna, Krishna Dvaipayana, Satyavati Sutta, Parasharya, Parasharatmaja, Badarayana, Vedavyasa, and so on. He was the son of Mahamuni Parashara in the womb of Satyavati prior to her betrothal with Maharaja Shantanu, the father of the great general, grandfather Bhismadeva. He is a powerful incarnation of Narayana, and he broadcasts the Vedic wisdom to the world. As such, Vyasadeva is offered respect before one chants the Vedic literature, especially the Puranas. Shukadeva Goswami was his son, and rishis like Vaishampayana were his disciples for different branches of the Vedas. He is the author of the great epic Mahabharata and the great transcendental literature Bhagavatam. The Brahma Sutras, the Vedanta Sutras, or Badarayana Sutras, were compiled by him. Amongst sages, he is the most respected author by dint of severe penances. When he wanted to record the great epic Mahabharata for the welfare of all people in the age of Kali, he was feeling the necessity of a powerful writer who could take up his dictation. By the order of Brahmaji, Sri Ganeshaji took up the charge of noting down the dictation on the condition that Vyasadeva would not stop dictation for a moment. The Mahabharata was thus compiled by the joint endeavor of Vyasa and Ganesha. By the order of his mother, Satyavati, who was later married to Maharaj Shantanu, and by the request of Bhismadeva, the eldest son of Maharaj Shantanu by his first wife, the Ganges, he begot 3 brilliant sons, whose names are Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. The Mahabharata was compiled by Vyasadeva after the Battle of Kurukshetra and after the death of all the heroes of Mahabharata. It was first spoken in the royal assembly of Maharaj Janamejaya, the son of Maharaj Parikshit. Okay, Brihadashva, an ancient sage who used to meet Maharaj Yudhishthira now and then. First of all, he met Maharaj Yudhishthira at Kamyavan. This sage narrated the history of Maharaj Nala. There is another Brihadashva, who is the son of the Ikshwaku dynasty. Bharadwaj. He is one of the 7 great rishis and was present at the time of the birth ceremony of Arjuna. The powerful rishi sometimes undertook severe penances on the shore of the Ganges, and his ashrama is still celebrated at Prayagadam. It is learned that this rishi, while taking bath in the Ganges, happened to meet Gritachi, one of the beautiful society, girls of heaven, and thus he discharged semen, which was kept and preserved in an earthen pot, and from which Drona was born. So Dronacharya is the son of Bharadwaj Muni. Others say that Bharadwaj, the father of Drona, is a different person from Maharshi Bharadwaj. He was a great devotee of Brahma. Once he approached Dronacharya and requested him to stop the battle of Kurukshetra. Parashurama and Renukasuta. Parashurama or Renukasuta. He is the son of Maharshi Jamanagni and Srimati Renuka. Thus he is also known as Renukasuta. He is one of the powerful incarnations of God, and he killed the Kshatriya community as a whole 21 times. That means 21 generations. With the blood of the Kshatriyas, he pleased the souls of his forefathers. Later on, he underwent severe penances at the Mahendra Parvata. After taking the whole earth from the Kshatriyas, he gave it in charity to Kashyapa Muni. Parashurama instructed the Dhanurveda, or the science of fighting, to Dronacharya because he happened to be a Brahmana. He was present during the coronation of Maharaj Yudhishthira, and he celebrated the function along with the other great rishis. Parashurama is so old that he met both Rama and Krishna at different times. He fought with Rama, but he accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He also praised Arjuna when he saw him with Krishna. When Bhishma refused to marry Amba, who wanted him to become her husband, Amba met Parashurama, and by her request only, he asked Bhismadeva to accept her as his wife. Bhishma refused the order, to obey his order, although he was one of the spiritual masters of Bhismadeva. Parashurama fought with Bhismadeva, and when Bhishma neglected his warning, both of them fought very severely, and at last Parashurama was pleased with Bhishma and gave him the benediction of becoming the greatest fighter in the world. This is why it was such a big deal when Bhishma was on the other side, because he was in the beginning of the Gita. You remember when Duryodhana was politically trying to fire up, Dronacharya? He was saying that our army is perfectly protected by Bhismadeva, whereas the army of the Pandavas is not so perfectly protected by Bhima. And this is why Bhishma was the greatest warrior of the world, benedicted by Parashurama himself. Okay, next, Vashishta, the great celebrated sage among the Brahmanas, well known as the Brahmarshi Vashishtadeva. He is a prominent figure in both the Ramayana and Mahabharata periods. He celebrated the coronation ceremony of the personality of Godhead, Sri Rama. He was present also on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He could approach all the higher and lower planets, and his name is also connected with the history of Hiranyakashipu. There was a great tension between him and Vishwamrita, who wanted his Kamadhenu, wish-fulfilling cow. Vashishta Muni refused to spare his Kamadhenu, and for this Vishwamrita killed his 100 sons. As a perfect Brahmana, he tolerated all the taunts of Vishwamrita. Once he tried to commit suicide on account of Vishwamrita's torture, but all his attempts were unsuccessful. He jumped from a hill, but the stones on which he fell became a stack of cotton, and thus he was saved. He jumped into the ocean, but the waves washed him ashore. He jumped into the river, but the river also washed him ashore. Thus all his suicide attempts were unsuccessful. He is also one of the 7 rishis and husband of Arundhati, the famous star. Indra another celebrated rishi. Trita, one of the three sons of Prajapati Gautama. He was the third son, and his other two brothers were known as Ekat and Dvita. All the brothers were great sages and strict followers of the principles of religion. By dint of severe penances, they were promoted to Brahmaloka, the planet where Brahmaji lives. Once Chitta-Muni fell into a well. He was an organizing worker of many sacrifices, and as one of the great sages, he also came to show respect to Bhishmaji at his deathbed. He was one of the 7 sages in the Varuna Loka. He hailed from the western countries of the world. As such, most probably he belonged to the European countries. At that time, the whole world was under one Vedic culture. Gritsamada, one of the sages of the heavenly kingdom. He was a close friend of Indra, the king of heaven, and he was as great as Brihaspati. He used to visit the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthira, and he also visited the place where Bhismadeva breathed his last. Sometimes he explained the glories of Lord Shiva before Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was the son of Vitahabhya, and he resembled in features the body of Indra. Sometimes the enemies of Indra mistook him to be Indra and arrested him. He was a great scholar of the Rig Veda, and thus he was highly respected by the Brahmana community. He lived a life of celibacy and was powerful in every respect. Asita, there was a king of the same name, but herein the Asita mentioned is the Asita Devala Rishi, a great powerful sage of the time. He explained to his father 1,500,000 verses from the Mahabharata. He was one of the members in the snake sacrifice of Maharaj Janamejaya. He was also present during the coronation ceremony of Maharaj Yudhishthira, along with other great rishis. He also gave Maharaj Yudhishthira instructions while he was on the Anjana hill. He was also one of the devotees of Lord Shiva. Kakshivan, one of the sons of Gautama Muni and the father of the great sage Chandrakoshika. He was one of the members of parliament of Maharaj Yudhishthira. Atri. Atri Muni was a great Brahmana sage and was one of the mental sons of Brahmaji. Brahmaji is so powerful that simply by thinking of a son, he can have it. These sons are known as Manasaputras. Out of the 7 Manasaputras of Brahmaji, and out of the great 7 Brahmana sages, Atri was one. In his family, the great Prachetas were also born. Atri Muni had 2 Kshatriya sons who became kings. King Artama is one of them. He is counted as one of the 21 Prajapatis. His wife's name was Anusuya, and he helped Maharaj Parikshit in his great sacrifices. Kaushika, one of the permanent rishi members in the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthira. He sometimes met Lord Krsna. There are several other sages of the same name. Sudarshana. This wheel, which is accepted by the personality of Godhead, Vishnu or Krishna, as his personal weapon, is the most powerful weapon, greater than the Brahmastras or similar other disastrous weapons. In some of the Vedic literatures, it is said that Agnideva, the fire god, presented this weapon to Lord Sri Krishna, but factually, this weapon is eternally carried by the Lord. Agnideva presented this weapon to Krishna in the same way that Rukmini was given by Maharaj Rukma to the Lord. The Lord accepts such presentations from his devotees, even though such presentations are eternally his property. There is an elaborate description of this weapon in the Adi Parva of the Mahabharata. Lord Sri Krishna used this weapon to kill Shishupala, a rival of the Lord. He also killed Shalva by this weapon, and sometimes he wanted his friend Arjuna to use it to kill his enemies. Mahabharata Virata Parva 56:3. So there's one little explanation for this last point, and that is that when Krishna comes into the material world, as we've mentioned many times, he agrees to act as if he is under the laws of nature, even though he's not. And so to allow these eternal weapons and things to come into his world and become his, in his Prakat Lila, in his external Lila, there are arrangements made by Yogamaya for them to be given to him, even though they're always his and he always has them. That's the explanation. Okay, moving on. Text 8. And many others, like Shukadeva Goswami and other purified souls, Kashyapa and Angirasa and others, all accompanied by the respective disciples, arrive there. Purport. Shukadeva Goswami, Brahmarata, the famous son and disciple of Sri Vyasadeva, who taught him first the Mahabharata and then Srimad-Bhagavatam. Shukadeva Goswami recited 1,400,000 verses of the Mahabharata in the councils of the Gandharvas, Yakshas, and Rakshasas. And he recited Srimad-Bhagavatam for the first time in the presence of Maharaj Parikshit. He thoroughly studied all the Vedic literatures from his great father. Thus he was a completely purified soul by dint of his extensive knowledge in the principles of religion. From Mahabharata Sabha Parva 4:11, it is understood that he was also present in the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthira and at the fasting of Maharaj Parikshit. As a bona fide disciple of Sri Vyasadeva, he inquired from his father very extensively about religious principles and spiritual values, and his great father also satisfied him by teaching him the yoga system by which one can attain the spiritual kingdom. The difference between fruitive work and empiric knowledge, the ways and means of attaining spiritual realization, the 4 ashramas, namely the student life, the householder's life, the retired life, and the renounced life, the sublime position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the process of seeing him face to face, the bona fide candidate for receiving knowledge, the consideration of the 5 elements, the unique position of intelligence, the consciousness of the material nature and the living entity, the symptoms of the self-realized soul, the working principles of the material body, the symptoms of the influential modes of nature, the tree of perpetual desire, and psychic activities. Sometimes he went to the sun planet with the permission of his father and Naradaji. Descriptions of his travel in space are given in the Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata. At last he attained the transcendental realm. He is known by different names like Aranyeya, Aruni Sutta, Vyasaki, and Vyasat Maja. Shukadeva Goswami. Kashyapa, one of the Prajapatis, the son of Marichi, and one of the sons-in-law of Prajapati Daksha. He is the father of the gigantic bird Garuda, who was given elephants and tortoises as eatables. Big bird. He married 13 daughters of Prajapati Daksha, and their names are Aditi, Diti, Danu, Kashta, Arishta, Surasa, Ila, Muni, Krodashwasha, Tamra, Surabhi, Sadama, and Timi. He begot many children, both demigods and demons, by those wives, from his first wife Aditi, all the 12 Adityas were born. One of them is Vamana, the incarnation of Godhead. This great sage, Kashyapa, was also present at the time of Arjuna's birth. He received a presentation of the whole world from Parashurama, and later on he asked Parashurama to go out of the world. His other name is Arishtanemi. He lives on the northern side of the universe. Angirasa. He is the son of Maharshi Angira and is known as Brihaspati, the priest of the demigods. It is said that Dronacharya was his partial incarnation. Shukracharya was the spiritual master of the demons, and Brihaspati challenged him. His son is Kacha, and he delivered the fire weapon first to Bharadwaj Muni. He begot 6 sons, like the fire god, by his wife Chandramasi, one of the reputed stars. He could travel in space, and therefore he could present himself even in the planets of Brahmaloka and Indraloka. He advised the king of heaven, Indra, about conquering the demons. Once he cursed Indra, who thus had to become a hog on the earth and was unwilling to return to heaven. Such is the power of the attraction of the illusory energy. Even a hog does not wish to part with its earthly possessions in exchange for a heavenly kingdom. He was the religious preceptor of the natives of different planets. Angirasa. Text 9. Bhismadeva, who was the best among the 8 Vasus, received and welcomed all the great and powerful rishis who were assembled there, for he knew perfectly all the religious principles according to time and place. Just imagine, he's laying on a bed of arrows, excruciating situation, and he greets, and he's been lying there for quite some time, weeks actually, and because he was the first of the major players on the other side to be killed, or to go down rather, not be killed. And so he laid there. That was 18 days. I think he was the first or second day he was killed, and then it took 18 days. So that's almost 3 weeks. And then they all went, and so many things were going on, and he was still lying there waiting. And Yudhishthir refused to take the throne. He felt so bad that all these men were killed and all these women were become widows, and so he refused to take out of dharma, out of religious principles. He didn't want to accept. He thought it wasn't fair. So Krishna had arranged for all these things to happen at the same time. He knew that Bhishma wanted to see him, Krishna, at the time of his death. That was his goal of life, and he wanted to be there. And he wanted Bhishma to convince Yudhishthir to take the throne. Because then the world will become religious again. So for the benefit of all the people of the world, these things are going on. Krishna arranged all these things. Okay. So he knew everything. How to greet each person according to their position, properly, with the right mood, with the right affection, all this time while he's lying there. Amazing. Purport: expert religionists know perfectly well how to adjust religious principles in terms of time and place. All the great acharyas, or religious preachers, or reformers of the world, executed their mission by adjustment of religious principles in terms of time and place. There are different climates and situations in different parts of the world, and if one has to discharge his duties to preach the message of the Lord, he must be expert in adjusting things in terms of the time and place. Bhismadeva was one of the 12 great authorities in preaching this cult of devotional service, and therefore he could receive and welcome all the powerful sages assembled there at his deathbed from all parts of the universe. he was certainly unable at that time to welcome and receive them physically because he was neither at his home nor in a normal, healthy condition. But he was quite fit by the activities of his sound mind, and therefore he could utter sweet words with hearty expressions, and all of them were well received. One can perform one's duty by physical work, by mind, and by words. And he knew well how to utilize them at the proper place, and therefore there was no difficulty for him to receive them, although physically unfit. Text 10. Lord Sri Krishna is situated in everyone's heart, yet he manifests his transcendental form by his internal potency. This very Lord was sitting before Bhismadeva, and since Bhismadeva knew of his glories, he worshipped him duly. Purport. The Lord's omnipotency is displayed by his simultaneous presence in every place. He is present always in his eternal abode, Goloka Vrindavana, and still he is present in everyone's heart, and even within every invisible atom. When he manifests his eternal transcendental form in the material world, he does so by his internal potency. The external potency, or the material energy, has nothing to do with his eternal form. All these truths were known to Sri Bhismadeva, who worshipped him accordingly. Text 11. The sons of Maharaj Pandu were sitting silently nearby, overtaken with affection for their dying grandfather. Seeing this, Bhismadeva congratulated them with feeling. There were tears of ecstasy in his eyes, for he was overwhelmed by love and affection. Purport. When Maharaj Pandu died, his sons were all small children, and naturally they were brought up under the affection of elderly members of the royal family, specifically by Bhismadeva. Later on, when the Pandavas were grown up, they were cheated by cunning Duryodhana and company, and Bhismadeva, although he knew that the Pandavas were innocent and were unnecessarily put into trouble, could not take the side of the Pandavas for political reasons. At the last stage of his life, when Bhismadeva saw his most exalted grandsons, headed by Maharaj Yudhishthira, sitting very gently at his side, the great warrior grandfather could not check his loving tears, which were automatically flowing from his eyes. He remembered the great tribulations suffered by his most pious grandsons. Certainly he was the most satisfied man because of Yudhishthira's being enthroned in place of Duryodhana, and thus he began to congratulate them. It's interesting because Duryodhana was actually not a bad administrator in terms of economics and administration of the thing, but he was not honest, and he was always trying to kill the Pandavas, who were sons of demigods and the actual true heirs of the throne and the natural leaders of the earth, rulers of the earth. So even though he was not a bad administrator, that he was unqualified. So Krishna decided to replace him. Text 12. Bhismadeva said, "Oh, what terrible sufferings and what terrible injustices you good souls had to suffer for being the sons of religion personified. You did not deserve to remain alive under those tribulations, yet you were protected by the Brahmanas, God, and religion." Purport. Maharaj Yudhishthira was disturbed due to the great massacre in the battle of Kurukshetra. Bhismadeva could understand this, and therefore he spoke first of the terrible sufferings of Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was put into difficulty by injustice only, and the battle of Kurukshetra was fought just to counteract this injustice. Therefore, he should not regret the great massacre. He wanted to point out particularly that they were always protected by the Brahmanas, the Lord, and religious principles. As long as they were protected by these three important items, there was no cause of disappointment. Thus, Bhismadeva encouraged Maharaj Yudhishthira to dissipate his despondency. As long as a person is fully in cooperation with the wishes of the Lord, guided by the bona fide Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and strictly following the religious principles, one has no cause for despondency, however trying the circumstances of life. Bhismadeva, as one of the authorities in the line, wanted to impress this point upon the Pandavas. Hare Krishna. Nitya Kishori has to leave us crying, waiting for her to return. All right, see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Text 13. As far as my daughter-in-law Kunti is concerned, upon the great General Pandu's death, she became a widow with many children, and therefore she suffered greatly. And when you were grown up, she suffered a great deal also because of your actions. Purport. The sufferings of Kunti Devi are doubly lamented. She suffered greatly because of early widowhood and to get her minor children brought up in the royal family. And when her children were grown up, she continued to suffer because of her son's actions. So her sufferings continued. This means that she was destined to suffer by providence. And this one has to tolerate without being disturbed. Text 14. In my opinion, this is all due to inevitable time, under whose control everyone in every planet is carried away, just as the clouds are carried by the wind. Purport. There is control by time all over the space within the universe, as there is control by time all over the planets. All the big gigantic planets, including the sun, are being controlled by the force of air, as the clouds are carried by the force of air. Similarly, the inevitable kala, or time, controls even the action of the air and other elements. Everything, therefore, is controlled by the supreme kala, a forceful representative of the Lord within the material world. Thus, Yudhishthira should not be sorry for the inconceivable action of time. Everyone has to bear the actions and reactions of time, as long as one is within the conditions of the material world. Yudhishthira should not think that he had committed sins in his previous birth and is suffering the consequence. Even the most pious has to suffer the condition of material nature. But a pious man is faithful to the Lord, for he is guided by the bona fide Brahmana and Vaishnava, following the religious principles. These three guiding principles should be the aim of life. One should not be disturbed by the tricks of eternal time. Even the great controller of the universe, Brahmaji, is also under the control of that time. Therefore, one should not grudge being thus controlled by time, despite being a true follower of religious principles. Text 15. Oh, how wonderful is the influence of inevitable time. It is irreversible. Otherwise, how can there be reverses in the presence of King Yudhishthira, the son of the demigod controlling religion? Bhima, the great fighter with a club, the great bowman Arjuna with his mighty weapon Gandiva, and above all, the Lord, the direct well-wisher of the Pandavas. Purport. As far as the material or spiritual resources were required, there was no scarcity in the case of the Pandavas. Materially, they were well equipped because two great warriors, namely Bhima and Arjuna, were there. Spiritually, the king himself was the symbol of religion, and above all of them, the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna was personally concerned with their affairs as the well-wisher. And yet, there were so many reverses on the side of the Pandavas. Despite the power of pious acts, the power of personalities, the power of expert management, and the power of weapons under the direct supervision of Lord Krishna, the Pandavas suffered so many practical reverses, which can only be explained as due to the influence of Kala, inevitable time. Kala is identical with the Lord himself, and therefore the influence of Kala indicates the inexplicable wish of the Lord himself. There is nothing to be lamented when a matter is beyond the control of any human being. Text 16. O King, no one can know the plan of the Lord, Sri Krishna. Even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. Purport. The bewilderment of Maharaj Yudhishthira over the past sinful acts and the resultant sufferings, etc., is completely negated by the great authority of Bhishma, one of the 12 authorized persons. Bhishma wanted to impress upon Maharaj Yudhishthira that since time immemorial, no one, including such demigods as Shiva and Brahma, could ascertain the real plan of the Lord. So what can we understand about it? It is useless also to inquire about it. Even the exhaustive philosophical inquiries of sages cannot ascertain the plan of the Lord. The best policy is simply to abide by the orders of the Lord without argument. The sufferings of the Pandavas were never due to their past deeds. The Lord had to execute the plan of establishing the kingdom of virtue, and therefore his own devotees suffered temporarily in order to establish the conquest of virtue. Bhismadeva was certainly satisfied by seeing the triumph of virtue, and he was glad to see Yudhishthira on the throne, although he himself fought against him. Even a great fighter like Bhishma could not win the battle of Kurukshetra because the Lord wanted to show that vice cannot conquer virtue. There it is. That's the end, conclusion, the battle of Kurukshetra. Regardless of who tries to execute it. I'll read that again. Very nice. Even a great fighter like Bhishma could not win the battle of Kurukshetra because the Lord wanted to show that vice cannot conquer virtue, regardless of who tries to execute it. Bhismadeva was a great devotee of the Lord, but he chose to fight against the Pandavas by the will of the Lord, because the Lord wanted to show that a fighter like Bhishma cannot win on the wrong side. Fantastic. Text 17. O best among the descendants of Bharata, Yudhishthira, I maintain therefore that all this is within the plan of the Lord. Accepting the inconceivable plan of the Lord, you must follow it. You are now the appointed administrative head, and my Lord, you should now take care of those subjects who are now rendered helpless. Purport. The popular saying is that a housewife teaches the daughter-in-law by teaching the daughter. Similarly, the Lord teaches the world by teaching his devotee. The devotee does not have to learn anything new from the Lord because the Lord teaches the sincere devotee always from within. Whenever, therefore, a show is made to teach the devotee, as in the case of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, it is for teaching the less intelligent men. A devotee's duty, therefore, is to ungrudgingly accept tribulations from the Lord as a benediction. The Pandavas were advised by Bhismadeva to accept the responsibility of administration without hesitation. The poor subjects were without protection due to the battle of Kurukshetra, and they were awaiting the assumption of power by Maharaja Yudhishthira. The pure devotee of the Lord accepts tribulations as favors from the Lord. Since the Lord is absolute, there is no mundane difference between the two. Text 18. Thus Sri Krishna is no other than the inconceivable, original personality of Godhead. He is the first Narayana, the supreme enjoyer. But he is moving amongst the descendants of King Vrishni just like one of us, and he is bewildering us with his self-created energy. Purport. The Vedic system of acquiring knowledge is the deductive process. The Vedic knowledge is received perfectly by disciplic succession from authorities. Such knowledge is never dogmatic, as ill-conceived by less intelligent persons. The mother is the authority to verify the identity of the father. She is the authority for such confidential knowledge. Therefore, authority is not dogmatic. Read that again. The mother is the authority to verify the identity of the father. She is the authority for such confidential knowledge. Therefore, authority is not dogmatic.
What does dogmatic mean?
Dogmatic means you have to accept it without reason. In the Bhagavad Gita, this truth is confirmed in the 4th chapter. And the perfect system of learning is to receive it from authority. The very same system is accepted universally as truth, but only the false arguer speaks against it. For example, modern spacecraft fly in the sky, and when scientists say that they travel to the other side of the moon, men believe these stories blindly because they have accepted the modern scientists as authorities. The authorities speak, and the people in general believe them. But in the case of Vedic truths, they have been taught not to believe. Even if they accept them, they give a different interpretation. Each and every man wants a different perception of Vedic knowledge. Otherwise, they foolishly refuse to accept it. This means that the misguided man can believe one authority, the scientist, but will reject the authority of the Vedas. The result is that people have degenerated. Here is an authority speaking about Sri Krishna as the original personality of Godhead and the first Narayana. Even such an impersonalist as Acharya Shankara has said in the beginning of his commentation on the Bhagavad Gita that Narayana, the personality of Godhead, is beyond the material creation. The universe is one of the material creations, but Narayana is transcendental to such material paraphernalia. Bhismadeva is one of the 12 Mahajanas who know the principles of transcendental knowledge. His confirmation of Lord Sri Krishna's being the original personality of Godhead is also corroborated by the impersonalist Shankara. All other acharyas have also confirmed this statement, and thus there is no chance of not accepting Lord Sri Krishna as the original personality of Godhead. Bhismadeva says that he is the first Narayana. This is also confirmed by Brahmaji in the Bhagavatam 10.14.14. Krishna is the first Narayana. In the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, there are unlimited numbers of Narayanas, who are all the same personality of Godhead and are considered to be the plenary expansions of the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The first form of the Lord, Sri Krishna, first expands himself as the form of Baladeva. And Baladeva expands in so many other forms, such as Sankarsana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, Vasudeva, Narayana, Purusha, Rama, and Nrishinga. All these expansions are one and the same Vishnu Tattva, and Sri Krishna is the original source of all the plenary expansions. He is therefore the direct personality of Godhead. He is the creator of the material world, and he is the predominating deity known as Narayana in all the Vaikuntha planets. Therefore, his movements amongst human beings is another sort of bewilderment. The Lord therefore says in the Bhagavad Gita that foolish persons consider him to be one of the human beings without knowing the intricacies of his movements. The bewilderment regarding Sri Krishna is due to the action of his twofold internal and external energies upon the third one, called marginal energy. The living entities are expansions of his marginal energy, and thus they are sometimes bewildered by the internal energy and sometimes by the external energy. By internal energetic bewilderment, Sri Krishna expands himself into unlimited numbers of Narayanas and exchanges or accepts transcendental loving service from the living entities in the transcendental world. And by his external energetic expansions, he incarnates himself in the material world amongst the men, animals, or demigods to re-establish his forgotten relation with the living entities in different species of life. Great authorities like Bhishma, however, escape his bewilderment by the mercy of the Lord. And thus end tonight's readings of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. We'll now take reflections. Anything that's stuck in your mind when you heard, any point you want to be elaborated upon, any question you have, please feel free. Bhismadeva. What a classic pastime, huh?
So, I had just one question. The Bhismadeva is like one of the 12 Mahajans. So, all 12 Mahajans has perfect transcendental knowledge of Vedas.
Yes. Bhismadeva and all of the Mahajans have perfect knowledge of the Vedas. You know, when Bhishma was teaching Maharaj Yudhishthira at this time in the Bhagavatam, in the Mahabharata, there are 300 chapters. 300 chapters of his teachings to Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was particularly specialized in Dharma Shastras. All the Dharma Shastras, he was particularly... Sometimes they have specialties, even though they know everything, but some will specialize in one part of the Veda or another part of the Veda. They know them all, but sometimes they seem to be specialists, depending on how they appear and what their mission is in the Leela of Krishna. Because they all interact with the Lord directly in his Leelas, in different Leelas, different times, the history of the universe. Yeah. 300 chapters.
Yeah.
He knew everything. And when Yudhishthira heard all that and knew just how important what he had to do was and how Bhismadeva wanted him to do it, there was no way he could say no, even though he had said no to Krishna. You see? So in this way, Krishna sometimes likes to put his devotees in a position that appears to be superior to his. Appears that they're more potent or they have more knowledge than him. That's his reciprocation of love with his devotees. You know, sometimes the father likes to see the son do better than him. It gives him great pleasure.
And verse 7, Vyasa. We know about Vyasa and Dhruva, but I don't know the Prahlad Maharaj, how Prahlad Maharaj get initiated when he's in a womb of his mother.
Yes. Yes, Hannah.
Alright, so in the purport about Kunti Devi's sufferings, it says she was destined to suffer by providence, and this one has to tolerate without being disturbed. And then a few pages back it says, as long as a person is fully in cooperation with the wishes of the Lord, guided by the bona fide brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and strictly following religious principles, one has no cause for despondency, however trying the circumstances of life. And then it goes on a few pages ahead of that to say, a devotee's duty therefore is to ungrudgingly accept tribulations from the Lord as a benediction. A pure devotee of the Lord accepts tribulations as favors from the Lord. So you start to see like these levels of self-realization.
Yes, very nice. Very nicely put and very nicely observed. You have acute spiritual intelligence. Thank you. You hear very nicely. And continue to do that, and everything will be revealed to you over time. Because providence is Krishna. Providence is the activities of time, and time is an incarnation of Krishna. And no atom in the universe can move without the presence of time inside the atom, and that presence of time is an impersonal incarnation of Krishna, meaning that it stays hidden inside. It doesn't manifest as a personal form, but the personality is there. The influence of the personality is there. It's Krishna's influence through the Paramatma, which has two features. One is in the atom as time, and the other as the supersoul in the heart of all living entities. And in this way, he is guiding from outside and from inside. So everything is happening actually by the will of the Lord. And therefore those who are Krishna conscious or God conscious, they accept that, and therefore they don't become disturbed. Even when something happens painful or untoward or seemingly unfair. When I was in the airport, I could have sworn that somebody put their foot out and tripped me. Because I've never done that before in an airport. It was just so unusual. And not only that, just to show you how providence works, I had gotten to the front of the line of the TSA pre-line, which means you don't have to take your shoes off and you don't have to it's a special line because I'm a global entry trusted traveler. So it gives me that facility wherever I go in America. So on my printout of my e-ticket, it said very clearly the number that you're allowed to treat PSA pre. And so when I went from Houston to Denver, it was on the printout so it was no problem. I got to the front of the line and it wasn't written on the printout, on the boarding pass. So I said, sorry, you can't come through this line because you don't have the TSA pre on your printout. So I said, really? And then I showed him my ticket that had clearly written. And he said, no, it doesn't make any difference because it's not on the boarding pass. So I said, you're joking, right? You're just playing with my mind like that. She said, no, that's the way it is. They have he said, it's the airline, United Airline, randomly selects some people who have that facility not to have it. And I just looked at him and you know how we are, we're logical people. And it didn't make any sense to me. He said, you have to go back. So I turned around and all there were a whole line of people coming this way. And I had to go back because there was no, gate right there. I had to fight through and finally get the gate. And people were always, in the airport, everyone's trying to get to their plane and they're all like, uptight. And I'm pushing my way through. So then I finally get to the main flow, and I have to go all the way to the other side and get at the end of the line, where you do have to take off your shoes and you have to do all this and that. And I was a little, not such a, this isn't right. And I was walking a little quickly, and then all of a sudden, boom, either somebody tripped me or I tripped over something because I wasn't attentive enough, and I just started going bump, 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 boom. And I landed right here with the full force of my body. And I've got, therefore, from here to here, black. And here was all swollen, and there was a big protuberance, like the bone came out, not out of the skin, but inside. And my elbow was fixed like this. It wouldn't move, and it was extremely painful. So I was laying there on the floor, saying, what's going on here, That's providence. If they would have let me through, and that's what was supposed to have happened according to the rules, according to what I had paid for, then that wouldn't have happened because it was in a different place and time. I would have just gone through. But as a result of that, I met, and I was a little in shock, obviously. Like they finally got me up, and my arm, I guess because I moved it, it must have put the elbow back in place or something. At least this is what the medic said, And she gave me this sling, a little souvenir to remember the event by. And she said, now I want you to go up. And she gave me a little pouch, like to put ice in. She said, I want you to go up. I said, you want me to go up and do something? I'm laying there like this, Yes, you have to go up when you get, can you get up? And then finally I got up, and I realized there was no other places in my body. Now they're starting to come out. Maybe in another day or two I'll have some different, aches and pains and bruises in different places. But right from then until now, the only places it seems to be affected is right here. So then they brought a wheelchair, put me in the wheelchair, put my bags in the wheelchair, and then they got me through. I went to the gate, and I was sitting there, and there was this really wonderful couple there, maybe in their 50s, late 50s maybe, or maybe early 50s. And he looked at me and he said, oh, what's wrong? Like he was like an old friend or something. And I said, well, this happened. And then he said they gave me this one. And she told me that I should take ibuprofen. Is that ibuprofen? She said I should take 8. And he said, you're not going to take 8 ibuprofens, no way. And then the guy that was doing the wheelchair, he'd had no brain. I don't know how he even got from that place to there, but anyway, maybe he knew the route or something, but he had no brain, didn't know what to do, where to go, where to get. So this man just got up, he jumped up, don't worry, I know where to get it, and he ran off. I'm sitting there, and he came back and he gave me the right medicine, and he said, no, you can't take 8, it's too many. And then later on, I found out that she probably said, and I didn't hear it right, 800 milligrams, and each one of them were 2, so that would have been 4, and that would have been a special first dose for the swelling, because that medicine affects the swelling, whereas others affect the pain. It affects pain also, but it has a feature that it affects the swelling. So, and I said, okay, how much do I owe you? I said, you can't take money from you. It was like I was meeting these old friends, and we were talking, and I made him memorize the Bhagavad Gita as is the name. I was in shock. I didn't think to get their contact information. I should have. They were so sweet. They were devotees. No doubt about it. Anyway, then finally we got on the plane, and we got off the plane, and they put me on a tram to take me to get my luggage, and they were behind. And they came up and said, oh, can we help you? Do you need anything else? What can we do? They live in Sugar Land. He's a computer engineer. And then Kuvera was there, and he was reading a Bhakti Guided magazine. So I said, Kaveri, immediately give this back to Bhagavad Magazine, to this couple, you know, and he did. So at least they got the magazine, so they got something. I wish you could meet them. Anyway, maybe Krishna will arrange. Maybe they'll read the address and come here. I don't know. I hope so. Anyway, so providence. You know, providence. I was supposed to go that way, and I had to go this way. And then as a result of all that, maybe I met these nice people, and they could do something nice for me, and I could give them the as it is, because he said, oh yes, I'll remember as it is. You know, so maybe he'll get the as it is, Bhagavad Gita as it is from the Amazon or something. So, yes, therefore Bhishma is saying, providence is all powerful, and it doesn't make any difference how pious you are, or impious, or spiritual, or not spiritual, or whatever. All of us in the material world are under the influence of Kala, of supreme time, which is another way of saying providence. So when things happen to us, we shouldn't be discouraged or disappointed. We should just keep on going, keep on trucking. And therefore, next morning I did my recording, and I did the reading, and again this morning reading, and the reading is so smooth. The recording was so smooth. It was amazing. So Krishna's there to help us, no matter what situation we're in. Sarva, the knower of providence.
The fact that the reading of Bhismadeva, he was saying that up there,
Yeah.
and we're seeing you speaking nice, gentle, and all, sitting on the arm. Seems like it's part of providence.
Yeah, I mean, you see? It even gets worse up here. I can't do it very easily, but it's worse up here. It's all through there, and this is all swollen. Anyway. No, it's really. As a matter of fact, I got a call from Guru Bhakti while I was getting ready, and I only read it just before I came here. Now I have to go and talk to her about this, because we have to find out if there's something, any complications or anything. But the one thing is, you should. It isn't so serious, although it looks very serious, and there may be complications. There may be a crack or something, but I can move this just practically normal. I don't feel any. I feel a little different, little something, but it's not very much. So that's a sign that there's no big break or big thing. But there may be complications because of the way my elbows are by nature. Oh, so okay, forgive me for saying all those things. Better that I just read the Bhagavatam to you and be blissful, because when we're in Krishna's association, there's no reason not to be blissful. Hare Krishna. Thank you for your lovely questions and your lovely reflection. And everyone out in cyberspace, thank you very much for coming and attending again. And please share and care. Hare Krishna. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Bhismadeva ki jai. And all the great sages that came to see him ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hare Hare Bol. Hare Krishna.